Kia ora koutou. Welcome everyone to this panel discussion. My name's David Ding. I'm an innovation advisor at Callaghan Innovation, specialising in Web3 and AI, and digital really. And our topic today is climate innovation in the emerging spatial web, which really is about the convergence of Web2, Web3 and AI. So these are some of the finest minds in the space right now, and it's my privilege to be facilitating the session. Here we have Stephen Prescott. He's the founder of the 10-4 AI. We have Jerome Kelsey. He is the founder of FreeDAO. We have Leanne Batts. She is the founder of Trakel Labs. And we have John Lauder. He is an innovation consultant and also the founder of Immersia. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, David.
Okay, so if you could just kick off telling us about what you're doing with your projects right now, beginning with you, John.
Yeah, sure. I represent probably several different companies. Immersia, which we'll talk about today, was one of the first movers in spatial web applications, and how to describe that, I guess maybe in Roy's own words. And Roy Davies was my partner and colleague in this company. He described it as the massively multiplayer gaming engine for the real world. And what we're doing with that was extending and I suppose reinterpreting gameplay in the context of a reality, in other words, in the context of a real world experience. So what we were doing when we started this work, which was around 5 years ago, was exploring cross-reality applications in this space. The important part about it was in particular the exploration of artificial intelligence in terms of influences on behaviour, and we'll talk about that a bit later.
Thanks, John. Leanne?
Yeah, I'm Leanne Batts, the founder of Trakel. With Trakel, what we're trying to do is essentially enable or solve the problems of decarbonising the world, and doing so very, very quickly, and also meeting that great unmet need of consumer will and business need to be climate active. So what we're doing is harnessing blockchain technology, in particular smart contracts, in order to embed carbon removal into these and use those across consumer-facing products and services to actually deem any one of those carbon negative or carbon net negative. But yeah, use them as a chance really to create positive actions, positive micro actions that could spread across the globe.
Very nice. So Jerome.
Hi, I'm Jerome Kelsey. I'm the founder of FreeDAO. And we're building tools that can allow people to collaborate, come together, and work on basically anything that they want to as a team using blockchain technology. So the nice thing about DAO tools is that they can allow people to essentially form groups without almost any permissions involved. So it allows people to work as a team. So,
yeah,
thank you.
Nicely said. Stephen?
Yeah, hi there, I'm Stephen Prescott, the CE and co-founder of the 1014. We create scientifically validated AI models so we can stand by the results. One of those models that we're working on is defensive optimization, so our defense gets better and better against a premeditated attack. We've applied this to rugby, we've challenged it with rugby, run it thousands of times, and now in rugby we have essentially what we call Moneyball for rugby. We can determine who to select, how to play, how to train. But during that journey into rugby, we realised that we could generalise this model to all adversarial sports. So we've upgraded it, and starting on American football. So if you take that example into American football, if they set up a scrimmage, we can optimise the defence, suggest who they should play, how they should line up. So that's where we're at the moment.
Okay, so we've spoken briefly about your proprietary algorithm, SEA, sample efficient algorithm. Can you talk to us about how that could positively impact climate change?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's hypothesised that in the next 10 years, the size of AI models may actually outstrip the availability of hardware. And that's a massive statement. But we don't know. Is it going to go that way? Is it not? But even if it goes part of that way or a long way towards that, that would, if you extrapolate that out, that's going to be an enormous carbon footprint, enormous amounts of power to power these AIs. And we looked at it in a different light in 1014, so we'd come at it fundamentally different questions. So what we call in Team 14 is we're in the honeymoon of data. So there's all this data that we're collecting data on the suspicion that one day it might be valuable. One day we might be able to, to monetize that data, train an algorithm off it. And these data sets are enormous. So we asked some questions on what data is actually required to solve the problems we're looking at, and how much of it do you need? And then you're not chasing your tail, you're not going for gains that aren't there. And we call that the data specification. So we've got a data specification, we know exactly what data is required and how much is required to train our models. And then when you start to look at that, instead of being this big, it's a very, very subset of data, and you still get the same results. And then that leads into training what we call our sample efficient algorithms. So we need a lot less data in 1014 to train the algorithms and get the results we require, as opposed to what's happening in a lot of the places here is massive data, massive compute power, huge carbon footprint. So we are at the other end of that scale and getting the same results.
Okay, and so what problem has that algorithm solved for you with what you're developing?
So that's solved our ability to be able to very, very quickly optimize defensive solutions against these premeditated attacks. So again, back to the American football example, you set up a scrimmage. In near real time, you can pull up the defensive optimization. Okay, that person over there on the bench should be on because they're more optimal in this position because they're this fast, they're this strong, they've run this line, they're this agile. So all of these things can come in, and it can be in near real time. And you can put that in the hands of everyone on the planet. So they're watching Super Bowl scrimmages set. Okay, how would I play this? So that's the sort of thing that we're looking at. And through the smaller amount of data, you can actually start to run some pretty interesting things.
Okay, and so how easy would it be to integrate that into another technology stack of another model?
I think if people are experts in those areas and they can ask the right questions on exactly what data do you need and how much do you need, and you might start with this much data, and then over time you can bring it down because you become more efficient. You understand that is such a marginal gain, that piece of data, but it's costing us an enormous amount to collect. Is it collected correctly? I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it's not, but you don't actually need that data because it's not giving you an added bonus. It's not adding to your outcome. It's just there on,
That's gold. That sounds like a transition plan in the making, actually.
Yeah.
Nicely done. Okay, so Jerome, on to you. Well, in your space, the obvious thing to me is how you can spark and promote collaboration around people, communities of people that want to help in this space. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the first thing that we've focused on is making it as easy to use as possible. So if you're familiar with Web3 technologies, there's usually gas fees involved. With DAOs, they're typically token-weighted voting. Mm-hmm. So if you want to start a DAO, you need to think about your tokenomics. You need to think about whether or not you might be issuing an unlicensed security. Mm-hmm. We've done away with that. We use proof of personhood with our DAOs. And that means that anybody who is joining this DAO without the gas, with the proof of personhood, they just join. Mm-hmm. They can, call up their friends, their mates, their coworkers, and they can form a collective and start moving together in a unified direction with shared assets that they can all democratically manage.
Yep.
So, in terms of climate, you can imagine that you have a group of climate activists and they want to work together and they want to raise some funds. They might want to do it fairly informally to start, and they can spin up a DAO, pool their money together, maybe raise some money, and then use that money democratically, for a direction, for an endeavor.
Yep. I think that's definitely one of the superpowers, and a lot of people don't understand in the Web3 space, you can validate an entire company without even forming a company. You can get product market fit, and that's very hard to wrap your head around, and it's because of the likes of DAOs.
And you can do it overseas as well. Like if you've got people that you want to collaborate with overseas, setting up a company, deciding where you're going to set up a company can be quite tricky.
Yep.
You can start a DAO, and if you need to form a company or a foundation around it at some point, you can make the decision a little bit later.
Yep.
But because the rules are all enforced with the blockchain, the money can't move unless everybody votes on it. And it's cryptographically secure. it almost gives you the same powers as you would with a legal structure, maybe even more so.
Yeah, I love that. And, Jerome and John are involved in a consortium that's coming together in New Zealand that also involves the consortium in South Africa to solve a massive global carbon sequestration problem. And they're actually going to be piloting the usage of a DAO to govern a company. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, especially places where, there might be a desire to collaborate together, but there might not be, there could be problems on the ground. There could be, war in that situation or deep corruption.
Yep.
This takes it out to another level where it's quite untouchable. It's very hard to compromise it.
Truly borderless.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Leanne, yours is right on the nose of this topic, so I'll just leave you to share your thoughts on on that.
Yeah. So what we're doing is absolutely designed to tackle this head on, right?
Yeah.
So I mentioned before, what we're trying to solve is the need to decarbonise essentially very fast, and especially focusing on sort of large-scale carbon removal.
Yep.
But coupling that with this sort of great unmet need from consumers and also businesses to act, right? So the options out there today sort of go, sacrifice something, either, choose a different product or change your lifestyle, some sort of great sort of behaviour change has to happen to kind of be active and actually, take part today.
Yep.
Whereas we believe that doesn't need to be the case. What we can actually create with blockchain is consumer-powered climate action, if you will, where we actually let the smart contracts take that over.
Yep.
So what we've gone off and created is a smart contract. It's open source, right? So these contracts exist out there, and what they become in theory is a little bit like a digital building block or a Lego block, if you will. So anyone can come in and use that smart contract to build any digital product, and whatever shape that may take. By using our smart contract and the little interface that we have to automatically remove carbon, what they can do is bake that in or embed that into their product.
Yep.
And so obviously really interesting in terms of a digital sense and things that will be consumer-led, digital fashion, which is already obviously a lot better sustainably.
Yep.
But you can actually make these things net negative,
Yep.
enforceably so. And taking out the need to trust any central party in this, you let the code enforce all that. And where we see this kind of going off into the future is, when we're talking about what is difficult for some people to kind of visualise, but the tokenisation of nearly everything. We enable that to actually, that code to actually take part in a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And at scale, if this becomes a standard that is applied to e-commerce, for example, and if you had a physical product that was backed by our smart contract, you could basically get that any product in the world verifiably carbon negative.
Yep.
And I think at massive scale, what that's doing is removing probably millions of tons of carbon.
Yep.
And it's certainly not a silver bullet, but it is a way that can simply sort of take over and really have a positive impact quite quickly.
Absolutely. And one thing I love about what you're doing, it's kind of like with the circular economy, you see the consumer being able to bridge that gap between wanting to make conscious purchases, and now you're enabling them to express their desire to do that.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing I'm really excited about with your venture.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. So John.
Yeah, just picking up, I think, on Stephen's theme before, and perhaps one of the elephants in the room is we refer to as big data. Why big data? As we started to develop the solution that we created with Immersia, we came to an understanding of how little data it takes to actually affect an outcome. The question is really about discernment, perhaps more than simply this argument that you need to remember everything. Who remembers everything? Human beings don't even remember their own histories very well. And I have a friend, every time we meet, we remember something both of us, only one of us can actually remember details of, but we assume the other one remembers them accurately.
Yeah.
And this kind of struck a chord with me because our platform was really designed as a non-linear storing methodology. So this means that you can have parallel experiences or single experience, each one's valid. And this really drew us into a place where we start to appreciate that everyone's story was equal. So this brought to bear a concept we called Indigenous Us, and also that every history was equal. Well, inarguably they are. In fact, it doesn't matter even if that history was fiction or non-fiction, they're equal. But coming down to this point of discernment, so the thing that we really picked up from, the thing we really learned from experience in creating a mechanism for nonlinear storytelling was the value of the context, the value of the place, and the value of the parties who are part of that mix. I want to come back to this point about big data, because the data registers that we had were just tiny. We didn't need big data. The entire mechanism was in a very, very efficient format of data management. And it brought me to a place where I started to question the ethics and rationale for big data systems. The issue being that if we believe we really need to learn and own and remember everything, we're never going to win, because the data power is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as they are today.
Yep.
And we've seen this with an impact in terms of climate. I mean, we've got data centers who use about the same footprint, data footprint or power footprint as Hamilton. If we want to look at crypto solutions and Bitcoin, the power use or carbon footprint of Bitcoin is a legend unto itself. So surely we can come up with solutions which are more efficient and reflect an understanding which relates to discernment of what data we need to retain, and in most cases, what we need to let go of.
Yep. Well said. And I think that's part of the job of a human being, is we decide what matters.
Yeah.
You know, these models, they are built to obey our commands, and that's the reality of it. So if we don't trust our own discernment, that's really the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So, we've got about 3 minutes left, so I just want to have a quick whip round. To your mind, what is the greatest barrier to adoption of your vision currently?
I think in terms of the adoption of the vision is, from our perspective, is understanding how we're going to qualify the experience and tokenize the experience. We went a long way with developing a solution that enabled a place-based experience that could be interpreted in a format that's similar to Aboriginal songlines. And this is when we taught nonlinear engagement, nonlinear storytelling. But I recall I wrote a thesis back in 1988 where I predicted that the world in 25 years would operate on a new form of commerce, and that commerce would be gamified commerce, relational gamified commerce, enacted through microtransactional economies. Well, we've had to wait a bit longer than 25 years, or maybe not, 23. No, it's been 30 years. But here we are, a group of people who are actually engaged in different levels of fulfilling that future vision. I was very excited when I met Jerome and looked at the work that he's been conducting and introducing the world to free DAO, because there is the mechanism that I can spin up a DAO. I can do it very easily. It is legal. It is irrefutable. And it can be shared immediately with my audience. I can put it up as a flag and enroll people in whatever activity or purpose I might desire. And I'd see that as a fundamental enabler in the future world that we've been looking at. So I think a lot of this comes down to timing and synchronicity, and
Well said.
Here it is.
Well said.
Yeah.
How about you, Leah?
Yeah, I think for us it's really this widespread adoption of tokenization, right? We've developed the technology, it's sitting there waiting to go. What we need now is this widespread adoption to kind of tack on the back to. And when it happens, we'll be there, ready to go.
And what do you think the barrier is to that adoption right now?
Yeah, I think usability, UX, that's the hard part, but it is being overcome, so it is happening.
Good call. How about you, Jerome?
Yeah, I would say usability as well. We are undergoing a little experiment to gamify DAO. So to get people to come in and figure out how to operate this DAO with incentives involved, to make it a little bit of a mystery game, to teach people to uncover the powers of a DAO. Because the problem with DAOs is that nobody really knows what they are at the moment.
Yep.
So we need a little bit of education. Usability plus education and a bit of incentives, and I think that can do it.
Yeah, and when you think about it, you could actually validate a new blueprint for a formal economy using gamification.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can see exactly that. Developing new game tools and gameplays, utilising them, I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah, our first DAO was around those lines.
Yeah.
Gamify a whole economic system.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
How about you, Stephen?
Distribution, getting what we've built out there to the masses. These are the small data sets, very, very different to what's out there at the moment, and getting in the hands of the fans, the players, the coaches, what have you, to play around with them is, they will see the results.
Yep. I think that's coming right now, isn't it? You're about to see, a breakthrough in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it from us, folks. Thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, Dave.